Okay, welcome back everybody to another edition of the Booze Brothers. This is a podcast where we try to have honest, no fluff conversations about our various experiences of quitting alcohol. And with me, as always, today is my brother Matt. Hello, Matt.
Good morning, everyone. Yep, we're back. It's another Sunday. We've got another edition of the Booze Brothers, and it's a really good one this week. I'm super excited about this one. So I'm going to hand back to you, Mark, straight away, because we have a special guest today.
Yeah, we're changing the format. That's right. Yeah, we figured that people were going to get pretty fucking fed up of listening to us two idiots. So we've gone with a guest. So we've got a mate of ours, or a very old family friend, somebody who, you know, in the early days, certainly, I think we kind of grew up with. Our parents were close friends, so you know, we've known each other pretty much from the get-go. And that's Barney Mercer. Now, the interesting thing about Barney is that he's originally, like us, originally from the UK, now lives in beautiful Australia. And having just been through a winter here in the UK, I have no idea why he's decided to move to beautiful Australia, but maybe I can figure that one out. And Barney's got a really interesting story. So we want to just here to share some of his experiences, talk to us a little bit about, he also quit drinking alcohol. I think he's coming up on nearly 5 years since he quit. So I've just got a little bit of his background, and then we'll grab Barney and we'll just have a conversation and sort of see where it leads us. But so Barney is an arborist, which I had to Google.
So did I. This is a tree surgeon, or less commonly arboriculturist, professional in the practice of arboriculture. I think that's
it's pronounced arboriculture, but yeah, all right.
Arboriculture, thank you. There you go. I couldn't even get that.
Tree surgeon will suffice. It's good then.
It's got something to do with trees, but we'll get, maybe Barney can fill us in on that. But also, Barney is a personal trainer, strength coach. In fact, I've followed Barney for quite a while. He's got quite a good, impressive presence on general social media, so I'll get him to explain where you can find him after this as well. But certainly I've found a lot of the stuff that he does around strength and fitness to be really, really interesting. But what's also fascinating is that he does a lot of breath work coaching, and I'm going to get him to explain this because obviously he's the expert. But basically the summary he gave us was that, in short, I help people find their way back to feeling more in their bodies than before, fixing injuries and imbalances, helping people deal with stress, anxiety, and depression to the point where they can take back control of their lives, releasing trauma, stored energy, and letting go of the stories from the past. So really relevant, really fantastic, really aligned to a lot of the conversations we've had. And also, you quit drinking, so you're coming up in, is it 5 years? You quit November 2019. So bit of a long intro, Barney. Sorry about that. I feel like I've waffled on a little bit, but yeah, maybe you can tell us a little bit about just whatever comes first, really, and then we'll talk a little bit about your experiences of quitting and what that's meant to you. You know, the changes that you've seen, and yeah, let's see where the conversation takes us.
Cool beans. Yeah, thanks guys for inviting me on. I saw your post on Facebook last week, and I was just like, I've got to get on that. Because I haven't seen you guys in 20 plus years, and having just read the book as well, I thought it'd be a really cool conversation. And I like I said earlier before we started recording, you know, I'm always an open book about these sort of things. So I'm always happy to share experiences with others, how I went about things, how everything went wrong, why, and, you know, just not feeling like you have to deal with these things completely alone, like I felt for a very, very long time. So yes, I'm happy to be here, happy to share, happy to see your faces again.
Yeah.
Even though you're sitting in the sunshine and I'm sitting here freezing my ass off because my heating's broken.
We managed to pick the one time of year where the weather in the UK is marginally better than it is in Australia.
Yeah.
So, and we'll do that. That's a common theme, by the way. If we do another one of these, we'll have to make sure that that is the case. So,
of course.
Barney, maybe just tell us, since this is a podcast about booze, most of our listeners are interested in that, and a lot of our listeners are either thinking about quitting, they're sort of on the fence, they're hovering around it. You know, a lot of the feedback we get is around what happens when you quit. You know, is it boring? Does your life just suck? We also have a lot of listeners who are quite new into stopping, so they'll be like a few weeks in, and they're, you know, right in that sort of early stage of I've done this thing, I've stopped doing something that I've probably done my entire life, and I have no idea if I'm going to be able to keep going with it, and I have no idea if this is even worth it. And just, you know, maybe tell us a little bit about your experience, what made you stop, how you stopped, how it's felt since.
First, if you don't mind, I just want to say a bit of a disclaimer, if you want to call it that.
Please.
Anything that I talk about now is meant with love and empathy and compassion. And for anyone who's listening who was there at the time, I'm not here pointing fingers. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. Everything in my past happened exactly the way it was meant to. And I'm completely fine with that. And I'm completely happy with it. So sometimes when I explain these things online, it can be interpreted in the wrong way. So everything that I say is 100% with love, and there is no pointing fingers. I've worked my way through it, and it's all great, and everything's groovy. Having said that, this time I'm however many years sober. I'm trying not to focus on numbers. I know it was in November. I don't know what date it was, but the catalyst of it, or the final sort of straw in the hat, wasn't as dramatic as or rock bottomy as some people could get to or whatever. But a friend of mine brought her new partner over, who was an Irishman, for a drink and dinner. So in my brain, I went, Irish guy, let's see what this guy's got in him. So by the time he arrived, I was probably 8 to 12 beers in already. He arrived with a slab and a bottle of whiskey, and you know, we went drink for drink, and yes, he can drink. And we had a great night. Everything was wonderful. Nothing weird went on. Nothing, you know, silly happened. It was just a lot of drinking, a lot of laughing, and some good food. The next day, I spent the entire day on the couch, which was unusual for me. You know, I was properly hungover, and I was watching my young daughter just climb all over me, and I was just like, this is nah. There's this picture right now. My wife was busy doing things around the house, and I literally couldn't get off the couch, which again was unusual for me. So I just thought, you know what, this is it. This is that moment. And I've been at this moment before, but at various different times. So I've quit maybe 4. This is probably attempt number 4, I'd say. And the difference.
I remember you just following you on Facebook and things like that, having quit. And then I remember seeing you with the drink in your hand again. And I remember thinking, you know, is he actually drinking again? Is it that happening? Or so interesting that you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been through, like, even at uni when I was like 19, I got to a point I was like, this is crazy. I can't handle this anymore. So I made up a crazy story that my doctor had told me to stop drinking for a month. I was full into I was playing rugby for like 4 different teams, and that involves a hell of a lot of drinking, as you guys probably know. So I just made up this crazy story. I just said, I've been to the doctor, I'm not very well. He's told me to stop drinking for a month. I loved it, but then I missed all the other fun stuff as well, so I went straight back to it. But anyway, like that. So ever since like way back then, I always knew that I was on a path that wasn't a good one. And so this time round, when I quit, I was already being drawn down a different road by at the risk of sounding a bit weird, like a healing path. So you know, I've been online, you know, social media is great. The algorithms are great. They spit out sometimes exactly what you need at the right moment. And I found myself at a sound healing. Yeah. And if, you know, if you remember what life was like before, you know, so if someone had said Barney Mercer and the word and sound healing in the same sentence, you'd probably laugh, or I would have done. And so I was doing stuff like that. I was starting to meditate. I was starting to listen to people like Ram Dass talk, if you know who that is. A few other people online, Aubrey Marcus's podcast, and all these sorts of things. So I was kind of heading in a direction where I was trying to fix myself, and I was already knee deep in fixing chronic pain in my back. So I was doing really well at that, and that was like for the first time in 20, 30 years, my back pain was starting to really sort of shift. And then the sort of spiritual side, if you want to call it that, was drawing me in, it was pulling me in a direction. And then every Monday, I'd be like, oh, 3 steps forward, 8 steps back. So I'd start drinking Wednesday or Thursday and finish drinking Sunday night. And then Monday morning, I'd be back on my spiritual path or back at the gym. And I'll be like, oh, God, this is too hard. So when I hit that point on that couch, I was just like, I'm done. This is it. And then my wife said, but it's Christmas soon. Are you sure? It's like, I can't handle Christmas. The way I feel right now, I can't handle Christmas. But the idea just, I don't know what it was, like inside, like physiologically, my body was just like, stop putting this shit in my body in you. And as soon as I did stop, it started to feel normal. Whereas every single other time that I've quit, it was always straight into a pit of depression, straight into what was, I can't believe I spent this long doing this. How much have I poisoned myself? How much money have I wasted? How much time have I wasted? My business should be way better than it is. I should have more money in my house, my finance, you know, all those things that you look at other people, you know, comparison being what it is. You look at everyone else and go, wow, they're so far ahead of me. Or you look at younger people and you go, far out. These guys are so switched on. When I was their age, I was just pissed all the time. And I'd get into this just downward spiral of, whoa, what about? And then the really, really awful part of that was then I'd get, I think I was maybe a year into sobriety, and I was getting to that point where everything was getting really loud in here. And my daughter was really young. My stepfather was just entering into a stage in his life, well, the end stages of his life. So I was driving around thinking, like really hoping for something bad to happen so I could start drinking again.
Amazing.
That is just the worst way to live, because I was looking for car crashes. I was looking for, like, I was waiting for my phone to ring about my stepfather being unwell, or, you know, just any reason to show, oh shit, I'm upset, I must start drinking. To roughly about 2 years, 2.5 years, and I was in such a bad place. My back was in bits. My mental health was in the toilet, and I was doing my best to stay sober, but doing my best to stay sober was killing me mentally. So I had a long conversation with my wife, and she just said, go down the shop, get yourself some beers, and take that part out, and then we'll work on the rest. And she was 100% right, which sounds really weird for someone who probably shouldn't be drinking. But at the time, the stress of not drinking or the desire to drink was so overwhelming that it was driving me into the ground. And I was not functioning well, and I was being an asshole, and you know, I was unpleasant to be around, as opposed to, yeah, I've given up drinking, aren't I wonderful now? No, it was whole opposite. But then, of course, I went back to drinking and told myself, right, 6 beers is all I'm ever allowed to buy at once, which was cool. And it lasted for 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, I congratulated myself with 12 beers. I went, I'll congratulate myself one more time. And then it went to toilet. It just went out the window. Been like is the learning to become a tree climber, tree surgeon, arborist, whatever you want to call it, saved my life from an anxiety and panic point of view. It taught me how to deal with that, which is another story we can go into if you want later. But also it kept me sober. It kept me from going into that I'm a drunk every day of the week, because you cannot do that job hungover. I tried it, trust me. The minute you get 30 feet off the ground, your brain just attacking you. You're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to fall, all this sort of stuff. So in order to be a good operator at work and make my money and, you know, support my family in that, I had to be sober Monday through Thursday-ish. And so this last time, it was brilliant. It was perfect. It was that one last big drinking binge. And it like, that was day whatever of a binge that finished with my friends that night. And then I gave up with such clarity. And then the next day and the day after it was like, right, now I'm going that way. I had somewhere to go rather than looking backwards and going, what the fuck have I done? Because I'm going that way now. I'm going forwards.
That's a really interesting, sorry, just to jump in, Barney, this concept of, which actually, funny enough, I never had, but I have read about it, and I've heard people talk about the sort of, when you quit drinking, you then go through a period of mourning and regret that you sort of, the fuck ups, the fact that you didn't do this earlier, the wasted time, the kind of, the trauma in a sense of, I guess you're what is it? Everything kind of feels like it comes home to roost in a sense when you quit. That's a really interesting concept. Something, like I said, I didn't get that when I quit. I felt uncertain. I didn't know whether this was going to be something that I could keep up, but I certainly didn't regret. I suppose I did regret that I hadn't done it sooner to some extent, but you know, it's that classic thing, isn't it? The best time to quit drinking was probably 20 years ago. The next best time to do it is kind of now, you know, and I kind of was able to go through that. But what is interesting about it, Barney, is the noise in your head thing, the stress, the pressure. And I do think that for a lot of people, that's the driver. That's the thing that either keeps you drinking or is the thing that triggers the drinking. It's, for me, certainly, I felt like I was under a lot of stress, and I always felt like alcohol was kind of like a lily pad in the sort of turmoil of everything else. I could get to that lily pad. I could get to the Friday night. I could get to the Wednesday night. And I knew that a few drinks later, I wouldn't be worrying about life. You know, I wouldn't be worrying about money. Because it was my way out. But for me, what happened is the anxiety, the after effects, and the sort of then the being afraid of what the world represented to me at the time, and thinking that the way out of it was to drink, but then finding out that it was 20 times worse because I had drugs. So you end up in this kind of washing machine, this turmoil of, you know, a complete mind fuck, basically. And it's interesting, and the reason I say all of that is because a lot of our listeners, and we get comments every now and again where they say, shit, I fell off the wagon, you know, I felt like I was weeks in and I just made a dick of myself. And in a way, it's good for people like that to hear that it sometimes does take a few attempts, and that certainly was the case in your case, wasn't it? That it, you know, for your case. But where you are now you look back, and it's coming up. You're coming up to 5 years, by the way. I did the math earlier, so that's, you know, in some ways that's quite a milestone. 5 years, you know, without any alcohol is a big deal. Where do you think it's taken you? I mean, spiritually, mentally, physically, where do you feel? What impact has it had on your journey, do you think?
Sorry, what was that? What impact has it had?
On your journey?
Well, it's created space for the journey. Because with alcohol in my life, the journey would be too hard, and without the journey, I wouldn't have given up the alcohol. So it was perfect timing all round. It's allowed me to enjoy myself, like enjoy who I am. It's allowed me to find out who I am, really, because, you know, you talk about drinking for stress and or stress relief or quieting noise or finding your lily pad and that. I actually preferred who I was when I drank. So the time between quitting and now, I've had these years to to experience myself and understand myself and come out of who I was at that time, because at a certain point in my life, I became someone else. I'll be honest, right? Going to boarding school, as we all went to boarding school. Did you, Mark?
Mark didn't,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
he knows
Going
from
to
stories.
Yeah, so going to boarding school for me, the way I look at it right now, changed me in a way. It made me someone I wasn't in order to survive that environment. And I'm not suggesting it was a horrendous environment. Me and Matt went to the same school for a bit. You know, it was what it was, and you do what you do to survive, or just get through the day, or whatever, or just have fun. But it kind of altered me somewhat, and then my parents' divorce then altered me again. So then when I found like drinking properly, it allowed me to be who I was before, in a way, to an extent. You know, I felt more me than I ever did when I was sober. Because when I was sober, I had to be sensible, I had to be smart, I had to be a leader, I had to be always well behaved. You know, I had to be, representing something. You know, because at school you're representing the school, you represent. Or then as soon as you go to work, that was my mindset. As soon as I used to love going to work with if I had a little emblem on me, it showed who I was representing. It was that mindset that I got from school. And I was always, always, always super conscious that someone was watching me and judging me. Even now, today, when I'm running my own business and I'm outside working, if someone walks past, I assume they're looking at me and judging the way I'm doing what I'm doing, and they probably have no clue what the hell I'm doing. They're not even looking at me. But it was always that feeling that someone was watching. So once I was like 5 beers in, I felt more like me than I ever did for a long, long time. And then that just became life. That's what we do. That's what I did. And like what that was, so like with you with your lily pad, that was me returning back to self.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, sorry, just jump in quickly, Barney. I want to keep hearing your story. It's absolutely fascinating. And I haven't said much. And if you heard me typing, I was just taking some notes, because a couple of things you said are just, I feel like you are, and this is what's the crazy thing about, drink and in my case, sort of drugs as well, is that, you always think that it's just you, that no one else is going through or has been through what you've been through. And that kind of is you find out that it's kind of wrong. So I guess three things really. The first one is I can totally relate to what you said about the stopping and going back. That happened to me. I stopped for, it was only a month, but I kind of got caught out. I got drunk in the afternoon. Not drunk, but I came home. I was stinking of booze, and it was obvious that things weren't right. And my wife had sort of had enough, and she sort of said, "You've got to do something about this." So I was like, "Okay, I'll stop." And I said that in the heat of being under the influence. So it was like, I woke up the next day and I was like, "Fuck, I've agreed to stop drinking. How am I going to do this? This is going to be a nightmare." You know what I mean? And so I stopped under duress, and as we all know, that just doesn't work. And so I kind of fought it for a month, and I hated it. And I, like you, it was depressing. It was Christmas as well, and you had everyone congratulating you, and at the same time you were just going, I'm hating this, I'm hating this. So similar to you, I kind of I wasn't probably in the place you were in, but where I was it was kind of like, okay, I proved to you that I can stop for a month, so I can stop anytime. So kind of let me have a drink again. And then I started drinking it, much like you, within a week or two, I'd been back on the phone to dealers and stocking up on all the booze I could get my hands on. So yeah. And then when eventually, I think you read my book, I did have a rock bottom moment, and it was similar to you, interestingly, that, it was kind of kid driven to a certain extent. It was that humiliation, embarrassment. I forgot to pick my kids up, and it just tore my soul apart that day. And it was, for me, there was no other choice. That was it. I had made my choice. It was made for me, really. That path just opened up, and I felt huge relief actually that day, because I knew that was it.
Yeah.
And then just on the boarding school one, I think that's a fascinating topic. It's not one that I delve into much because I guess I look at it as it was fucking brutal at times, you know, boarding school. I remember when I first went, I was 11 years old. I look at my kids now. My daughter is 11. And my, you know, our parents didn't actually, you know, they did this for the, you know, the greater good. They believed that it was the right thing to do, and they felt, you know, from my education and everything, it was a wonderful thing. But sending a shy, introverted kid to a boarding school without really telling them they were going to board, so it was like my name just appeared on this list. You know, the first couple of weeks, I remember having nosebleeds every night, and it was unexplainable. And now I think I know it was due to, you know, stress and anxiety and everything. And you know, don't get me wrong. I think, you know, there were good times. I had great friends. You know, I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for that time. But I think it does have a profound effect on certain people. And I, you know, I wasn't sort of into the sports and things, so that kind of was difficult too. I just finished because I want you to carry on, but just the one thing I wanted to tell you, I actually did a talk at work about my story. And on one of the slides I presented, I actually put up a school photo from Beechwood. So the one where we all sit in our uniforms, and it's everyone from the school, lots of people. And I put an arrow to myself to say this was me at boarding school. And I didn't talk about your name. I didn't say who you were, but I put an arrow towards you. And I said, this is someone else I know who's also had issues with alcohol. And I thought about that. And that's just, you know, two people in one school. And I always wonder how many other of our colleagues or friends had issues or have issues. And that's just one school. And think about all the schools, you know, it's
I reckon I could add another 10 arrows to that picture.
I reckon you
of all the people I've bumped into over the years, it was like you go, whoa, what happened to you? And they were probably thinking the same of me at the same time.
Yeah.
And like I said at the beginning in my little disclaimer there's no sort of anger or anything about what happened there or whatever. I think there were, like you said, there were some great times. We had a lot of fun because there was a lot of space, there were a lot of things to do. We had a lot of free time because we weren't home on the weekends, every other weekend or whatever it was. But it shaped us in a way that it didn't shape the kids that went to the day school. You know, you just have to adapt, and
you were on your own.
You're on your own. When you talk about the picture, again, someone sent me the boarding house version of the picture that you're talking of. So when we're all in our day clothes and we're sitting on those front steps, remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. And someone said it to me, go, hey, remember this? Look at us, look how young we were. And I looked at the picture and not one of us was smiling.
Yeah.
90 kids, there were 90 kids sitting on those steps and not one person was smiling. I don't know if we were all trying to be cool that day or it wasn't that. It just like, it kind of got me here. And so I don't know if I'm reading too much into that, but it just kind of went, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. But yeah, so there's a lot of people that I've seen from those days and the other boarding school that I went to that do have issues with alcohol. It may not be related to the boarding school. It just might be life, the way it is, society, the way it's set up or whatever. So, but yeah, but the thing about this time that I've given up drinking and like the journey that I said that I was beginning prior to giving up, it was almost like I was preparing myself to give up subconsciously.
Yeah.
So that once I had given up, I could then stand to one side of all those experiences, the boarding school, parents' divorce, university being an absolute nightmare because I was too drunk all the time to actually turn up to classes and playing rugby more than I was doing anything else. And let's face it, I didn't go there to learn anything. I went there to move away and get drunk and meet girls and play sport. Yeah. I had no intention of learning anything, which is no real surprise. I dropped out the first year and then tried to do it again and dropped out again. But I can now, this sort of sobriety and some of the things that I've experienced and the way I look at things now is that now I can stand to one side of all those things and kind of understand what went on, what happened.
Yeah.
Firstly, a great Peter Crone quote, if you know who he is it happened because it happened, and there's nothing you can change about it because it's already happened. So we can then look at things, and I can look at things and stand to one side and go, well, they did that because they did it. And whatever their motives was, or they thought they were helping me, or they it was all full of love or whatever, or they were just bullies. Then I reacted like that, and I went off on this path because of that, and that's what happened here. You know, you can kind of like step aside from it, like you're a third person viewing the whole thing again,
Yeah.
and just understand it with compassion, empathy, and love, and just go, okay, cool. That's why that happened. And it's taken me long, and I used to pretend for a long time as like, yeah, I'm grateful for the past and I forgive everyone, but deep down I was like, fuckers. But then over time and like with the breath work, and I've been on like last year I went on a vision quest, which is really cool. You basically sit in the bush for 4 days and you don't eat food. It's a much longer process than that, but yeah, the bulk of it is the 4 days of not eating. But it allowed me to really get into my mind and get into my head, and understand what went on and let it just be a thing. And like I talk about with the group breathwork sessions that I do for people, is it's like we're basically just cutting the chains that are holding us back. We're allowing ourselves to lose the stories. Like, who are you? Oh, I'm an alcoholic. I'm chronic pain. I'm this, I'm that. No, I'm just a guy trying to get through life with 2 kids and a wife and 3 dogs. It's that simple. Whereas always it was like whenever my back blew out, someone would say, "Oh, you hurt your back," and I was too full of pride to tell them, "Yeah, I hurt my back at the gym." Whereas I'd start with, "Well, when I was 7, this happened," and then I give them the whole life story, and their eyes will glaze over, and I go, "Oh shit, I've lost them here." And then, but I do that with all the things. I tell people way too much to try and justify myself. Whereas now I'm just like, "Yeah, I hurt my back at the gym. I'll fix it. I know how. I'll sort myself out tomorrow. Don't worry about it. It's fine."
Do you find you get to, like, you take responsibility of things now? Because I think for me before, it was probably someone else's fault. It was nothing to do with me, or I don't know. I looked at other people too much, maybe, people who maybe it has success, and maybe there's a feeling of jealousy, even, to some people. I didn't take my own kind of responsibility. And then, that day when I quit, that was the day when I took responsibility back. And now I just feel, everything I do, everything is down to me, really. It's like luck. I truly believe you create your own luck. You have to be somewhere to do something for that something to happen. If you're not there, then it's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. For me, it was very much about taking back responsibility, and that's what I think people don't do often enough. Is say, you know what? Yeah, it was me that fucked up, and I know that, and this is what I'm going to do about it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at with the whole sort of being able to look at the past. Like when I talk about uni, that was never my fault. That was never my fault. That was all other things. But now I look at it, I go, "Yeah, right." I failed my A levels. Someone phoned me up that morning and said, "Hey, do you want to come to this university to do this course?" And then I kind of went, "Yeah, cool." And then they explained the course to me for like half an hour, and I was just hoping that they would put down the phone so I could go and celebrate with my mates. I couldn't give a shit what the course was. I was just chuffed that I had failed my A levels and then miraculously then passed them again. It was like the call that I just didn't know was going to happen. I was like, cool, that was a massive let off. I don't have to redo my A levels. So it was like there was massive shame and guilt in the fact that the one subject I needed to get to university, I failed massively because I wasn't paying attention. So then that allowed me to then jump into this other course that was a load of crap for me, and away I went. And then after it all went to shit, it was never my fault because of that. Whereas now it was just like, I was young and stupid and doing all the wrong things. I didn't stop to actually think about it. I just wanted to not have the conversation where I had to admit to everyone or of my parents that, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm that
yeah.
guy. I didn't get the grades I needed to do the thing, you know. And now I look back at it, I also should never have even applied to university. I should have gone straight to trade school.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't it funny how I think the big fear is that you're being judged. You said it, you mentioned it, Barney, you know, and I think we all really relate to it, even if we don't always want to admit it. And, you know, there's this, we talk about, you know, comparison is the thief of joy. You know, if you start comparing yourself to others, you're on a hiding to nothing and being ashamed of what people think. And, you know, what you said right at the beginning, which was interesting, is that when you quit drinking, it created the space for the journey. And I think what Matt and I have found, what I've found, and I think also what you have found is you are able to be comfortable not feeling comfortable. You know, it's okay. The shame, I'm like you, we all, and the interesting thing about your past, I mean, you guys share an experience of boarding school. I'm in writing a book at the moment about, you know, the concept of the book is defining outcomes. You know, what is it you really want out of life? What direction do you want to go in? And I talk a lot about some of the shit that I went through. And what's interesting, my eldest son, who also has, you know, a few challenges, he has the things he has to sort of, you know, deal with. I'm sure he won't mind me saying because he's a brilliant kid. But he used an analogy of video games. He's a big gamer, and in video games, you have these assets. You either have a player, or you have a soldier, or you have a gun, or you have a car, or you have something that you basically. And what's interesting is these things evolve and they develop with things like AI. They almost take on a sort of life of their own. And every now and again, periodically, the developers of those games will deliberately introduce a weakness. So if a car gets too fast or it just gets too good, it becomes non-competitive. If a player becomes too good, if they become, and so they introduce these things, and they're colloquially referred to as nerfs. And he just in this moment of brilliant clarity, Louis just turned around to me. He went, Dad, people also need nerfs. Everybody needs nerfs. Everybody has to have. He said, if we all just walked through life and we just killed it, he said it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Everybody has to have something. And I think what you realize when you gain clarity, whether that's through a spiritual pursuit or whether you go through some sort of, you know, life-changing event like you quit drinking, is that you are able to kind of gain a perspective about who you are that allows you, you know, if you've done any spiritual work, I'm sure you've done work around the ego. You know, you try as hard as you can to live without, you know, ego at the end of the day is the sort of root of it all. It's your ego that feels the damage. It's your ego that feels threatened or whatever. And, you know, look, for me, like you, weirdly, I don't care anymore. You know, there are things that I would hide about myself that I would make an excuse about. I would go into protracted explanations as to why something had happened. Now I just say it. This happened. I did it. That's me. That's who I am. And it's such a freeing thing. It's such a liberating, you know, it's the thing that ultimately where you do find happiness, where you don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to present an avatar to the world. You just stand in front of the world and say, okay, this is me. This is me. I can't change it and I don't want to change it. I'm going to try and be the best version of this that I can. Okay. Am I going to fuck it up occasionally? Definitely. Am I going to, you know, do something that's a bit, I guess you could call it, you know, the humanistic traits of just doing stupid things? Probably, but that's who I am. And I just think all of us, interestingly, have found a place where, not always, but much more than we did when we were drinking. We're able to walk into a metaphoric room, wherever that is, into a group of people, whatever it is, and just say, this is who I am, this is me, and I'm not going to pretend anymore. I'm not going to pretend because it's killing me. It's killing me, more importantly. So I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I sort of absorb all of what you've said in my own, you know, through my own lens. That's pretty much how I feel about it too.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that Nerf analogy. I think that's amazing. It brought up a list for me of, like, you know, I would refer to them as my teachers. which I'll get to in a sec. But and then carrying on into what you were saying about like really feeling into yourself and feeling confident in yourself that this is who I am, took me a really long time to get there. And it was like I said, it was almost like I had to start that before I quit drinking, because there was a whole heap of self-loathing and lack of self-love, and there was a whole heap of joy missing. I couldn't get enthusiastic about anything. Like if we look at the nervous system, the basics are you got your fight and or flight, then you got like a flow state in the middle, which is where we are right now, hopefully. And then you got your kind of your freeze state, which is your over sympathetic and your hypo aroused, as it were. But that's your freeze state, is your depression, and that's where I was for like 10 plus years. So there was not a lot of self-love going on there. Like I literally couldn't see tomorrow, because I wanted to check off all the boxes for today and then go, have I done enough yet? Cool, I'm going to sit down and do nothing now. There was no fun, there was no joy, there was nothing. I was just trying to survive every day. And the only reason I got out of bed every day was a sense of duty to my wife and kids. And I lived a life of fear, guilt and shame, that my wife was watching me and couldn't bring herself to tell me how ashamed of me she was because I wasn't doing enough or I wasn't making enough money and all these things. And when I finally admitted that to her, she goes, "What on earth are you talking about? You do loads. You do everything that I could possibly want. You're brilliant. You're a brilliant husband. You're a great father." And I was just like, "No, I'm not. No, you're wrong." So, for a lot of people, I imagine when they give up drinking, that slaps them in the face in a big way. And it kind of did for me, but it also, I was at that point where I was ready to deal with that, because I'd had the nervous system explained to me, and I'd had the slap in the face of, oh shit, I've been stuck in freeze for 10 plus years. That's why I've been feeling like this. It was that acknowledgement and acknowledging where I was in here allowed me to then go, oh, okay, that's in here, then I can fix it, and I can start to change things, and I could immediately started to bring myself out of that via my guides, as I call them, various mentors all over the joint. But and then you talk about your nurse and your teachers, as I call them. So like that's a big teacher for me. So that free state, or acknowledging that free state, is a big moment of learning for me. It's like, okay, that's part of me. So I need to change that for myself. But then you go back another 10, 15 years, and that's when my panic attacks started. And that's when all the anxiety started. And that's where all that really went horribly, horribly wrong for me. So that's another moment that I refer to as my teacher. It's like the panic taught me how to deal with panic, or how to acknowledge the fact that something was deeply, deeply wrong within me.
So what do you think? What do you think caused those, Barney? Those, because I remember you mentioning those to me previous time. What do you think caused those panic attacks? Would you put a direct relation to alcohol, or obviously it's more to it? But I just wondered.
Yeah, well, alcohol didn't help in any way, shape, or form. You try and drink that shit away, and it's going to come and slap you in the face really hard. I tried it. What happened, right, was like my first time in Australia was coming to an end involuntarily. So I was being forced out of the country, lost my crappy job. I was playing rugby over here, having a great time. I had a great social life. I had a girlfriend. My brother was here. We were all great mates. Everything was, wonderful as far as I was concerned. Like the world couldn't be better, even though I was, from a society point of view, fucking useless. I was bumming from job to job. I owed everyone I knew money, mostly my brother. Sorry, bro. I did pay him back a little bit one time. Anyway, I was borrowing money off my mates so I could survive. And I was making this daily decisions like, I can afford, I got the X amount of money for today. Do I buy cigarettes or food? Because the rest of the money is going to be for beer. So, yeah. So then I'll go, okay, I'll buy cigarettes because that'll make me not want to eat, and then I can buy more beer. So I as far as I was concerned, I was living the dream. And then that ended. And then I had to go back to England. And then I had to live with my dad, who I hadn't lived with for 10 plus years. And all of a sudden, I became a 13-year-old asshole immediately. You know, it was like Kevin and Perry stuff. It really was. It was, everything looked awful. And then but in the lead up to that, I was having weird sort of feelings in my chest, and I couldn't breathe every now and again. Like every now and again, I was like, oh, fuck, I haven't been breathing. And I just put it down to, oh, my hangovers are getting weird. So I was just like, yeah, whatever. And then on the flight home, the whole time, I was like white knuckle the whole way home on the 24-hour flight. My heart was beating out my chest. I was like, this is kind of weird. And then after I'd been at my dad's house for a bit, all of a sudden I'd wake up in the middle of the night with my heart beating out my chest. And I was convinced I was this close to death. And it was 100% my fault because of all the drinking and all the drug taking and all the stupid behavior and all the bad food. So I was convinced that these were going to be the next 3 or so breaths were going to be my last. And I'd done it to myself. And there was nothing I could do about it. And then I'd get through that somehow. I'd flick the light on first because the dark scared the crap out of me because I was dying. And then I'd calm myself down, turn the light off, and somehow get back to sleep. And then it happened again. Same process. Then I'd go back to sleep. Then it happened again. Then I might sleep through the rest of the night. And then the next night, it'd be happening like 12 times. Then the next night, I'd get drunk. So maybe it only happened once. And it was just this constant process to the point where I then slept with the light on because it had a dimmer switch on it. So I put the dimmer switch right the way down so I could sleep through so I could, if I had to wake up in a panic, the light was already on so I could focus on something and sort myself out. And this is when I started to learn about breathwork because that's how we manage panic. Not that I knew at the time, of course. So that's where all that came from. And then it sort of, during the day, I'd be like this because I wasn't sleeping. And then it eventually turned into insomnia because I just dreaded the idea of going to bed. So I'd watch TV until gone midnight. Then I'd sit in bed staring at the light until 2 or 3. Then I'd get up and watch TV again until it was 4:30 or whatever it was before I had to get up and go to work. And then I'd go to work and I'd sleep in smoko, as we call it over here, or in England, morning tea, whatever you want to call it. And then I'd sleep much. And then I'd go home, probably nap on the couch. And then I'd get up, have dinner, and then I'd stay awake the rest of the night, having crazy, then it would happen in the car, or I would say to myself, I wonder if I had a panic attack whilst driving. Bang.
Yeah, that would trigger it.
But did at any point during that time, did you think, I should stop drinking?
Yeah. Every time I was hungover, and it was way, way worse.
Yeah. But it wasn't enough to make you, to get you to the point. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
The reason I did that was because I wasn't ready to admit that it was over. Yeah. Yeah. I understand. I wasn't ready to say, no, the fun has to continue. This can't be it. I'm 22 years old, 23 years old, whatever it was. This can't be it. I'll do that later. I've got to somehow push on and hope that this goes away on its own so that I can keep going. And I didn't talk to my parents. I didn't talk to my mates. My mates just thought I was being weird when I was hungover or, doing weird shit. I don't know. I honestly don't know what they were thinking, but I didn't tell anyone. I told the doctor and he gave me fucking beta blockers and said, no, you just having panic attacks, go away. And, beta blockers they just slow your heart down. It doesn't do fucking anything for a panic attack. So it was one of those moments in life where I should have immediately recognized that the alcohol was making it way worse. But I was like, nope, there's still fun to be had. And all my mates are going out and having the fun. And I don't want to be the one that gets left behind. What the fuck am I supposed to do? Yeah,
it's the hardest thing, isn't it? That fear of missing out, it's so bad.
The fear of missing out, but also admitting it, because at the time it was just like panic attack. I didn't know what it was. It just being dramatic. No, this can't be happening to me. I'm not. That doesn't happen to me. I'm 23 years old. I'm 6 foot whatever. I'm built like a brick. I'm a rugby player. I was getting paid to play rugby, and no, this doesn't happen to me. So it will go away. as long as I
sorry to interrupt, but I think just what I'm really desperate to say as well is, I think just listening to all of this, none of us here should underestimate how valuable and powerful it is that guys talk about this sort of stuff, that we talk about this sort of stuff, that I think, you can feel like you're on your own. And, we talked earlier about the journey and coming to terms with who you are and feeling comfortable living with, whatever it is, embarrassment or shame. I still feel like that's a journey. I still feel like there are times when I don't know that I can be 100% honest, or I try to sort of put forward a slightly more upbeat, presentation of something that I'm going through. But I think that's also fine. I think it is a journey, and just being able to sort of go on a podcast like this and say, this happened, I experienced this, because I think everybody does. And I think panic attacks are really, really fascinating, because I have a theory that most people have panic attacks. They probably just don't even know what they are, or they have mini panic attacks. I think if you've woken up in the middle of the night,
anxiety,
you wake up in the middle, you talk about the night terrors, where you wake up and then all of a sudden everything in the world seems 1,000 times worse. And of course, the more you try to avoid the panic, the worse the panic gets, which leads me to my next question, which I think is going to be probably almost, we'll need another podcast for it, because I don't think we can, answer it. But I'm just like, how the fuck did you go from that to where you are now? Because you just seem to be on this amazing journey. I mean, how did you find your way out of it, Barney? How did you build, and do we ever find our way out of it? Let's be honest. Do we ever, or do we just find ways to sort of manage it better? I think maybe there's an element of truth in that, but just walk us through that. How did you go from there to kind of teaching people about, and I do want to talk about breathwork as well, actually. I don't know if we can have time, but I'm really interested to know about that. So
I'll add that into the answer of the previous one. So you go back to your nurse, your teachers. So the panic was my teacher. It forced me to learn how to deal with it, because I was doing it in silence. But then, beautifully, I needed a trade to get back to Australia, right? So there was a school in Enfield around the corner where I was living at my dad's house, and my stepmother said, "Hey, they're doing free courses there for trees and shit," because I was working at Hatfield House in the forestry department. And so she said, "This course is government funded. It's 18 months. Brilliant. Rather than a 3-year apprenticeship or anything like that." I was looking at like all sorts of shit. I was going to be a butcher or a hairdresser or anything, whichever would get me fastest back to Australia. That's how stuck in here that if I went back to Australia, everything would be fine again. So I took up one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet whilst having massive panic attacks. I mean, this doesn't make sense, but it was perfect, because I was the oldest in the class. I was the mature age student. And it's like, once we did all the theory, once we did a whole heap of science, they started sending us up on the ropes. And what it's like when you're if you're on a group activity, you don't want to be that one bloke that needs help, or you needs rescuing, basically. So I would be up the tree. I would feel it starting to build in my chest, and I would feel that I'd have that little question in my head: "Oh, what if I had a panic attack up a tree?" It's like, yeah, genius, nice one. And then it would start building, and I'd have to okay, if this kicks in big time, there's 12 people on the ground plus 3 teachers watching me. They're going to have to bring me down, and I'll never come back to school, and then I'll be stuck in England for the rest of my life. So, and Anne Middleton describes this brilliantly in his book, Fear Bubble, where he talks about, being in military service, and you're behind a door, and you know that when you go through the door, you're going to meet combatants and you have to deal with them. So I hadn't read the book by this point, but I kind of figured it out as well. So as long as I was by the trunk of the tree, I was safe, so I could breathe. And I figured out nose breathing, mouth breathing was calm. So nose in, mouth out, and it calmed me down. So I kind of figured that out. And then I'd go out on the branch, which was the bit that terrified me. do my work, and then I'd return back into the fear bubble where I felt like I was safe. So cutting it short, that's me learning how to regulate my nervous system. So I could feel it building. I could feel the cortisol levels rising. I could feel the stress hormones going berserk. I could feel the little voice in my head going, "You're gonna die," and or everyone's going to laugh at you, or you're going to need rescuing. All those little voices. So then I would calm myself on purpose, and I would take control of the situation. And now I know scientifically that's me cutting off the brain from its normal processes. It's me intervening with the brain's normal processes, with the breathing and the heart and all the rest of it. So then I could get on with my work. And the more I did it, the better I got at it. And then I came up with little mantras in my head, was like, this is my job now, I must keep going. This is my job now, I must keep going. Or I'm a monkey. And I would just say that over and over again while I was climbing these trees. And I got really, really good at it. And I just kept going. And so, and then whenever the panic would hit me at other stages, I would get back inside my fear bubble and allow it to calm down. At the time, I still felt like it was happening to me because I didn't know any better. Now, of course, I know it happens within me. It is not, I don't have anxiety. Anxiety happens. Mm. It's a physiological response to a situation that I've either created in my head or that is actually happening in front of me. So I can then calm myself down and deal with it. So then I learned to be, like I said, really, really good at what I do, which gave me the confidence and power to keep going with my life. And it changed everything. It gave me self-confidence. It gave me, I'm an arborist. We looked like a bag of crap because we were covered in shit and our clothes were always ripped and everyone looked at us and, ugh. But in here, I felt like a fucking god because people couldn't do what I did. And I ended up being a contract climber where people would phone me and then I'd go do the things that they didn't want to do because it was too dangerous or whatever. So that gave me a really big boost. And at the same time, I was like, yeah, I'm doing shit so other people don't have to because I know how. And then eventually that started losing its thing. But then, that stopped being what it was and it started to get really hard and mentally I started to struggle with it. And then of course the back then goes out. Like I said, if you remember when I was a kid, I'd go to the chiropractor all the time, and I'd have little blowouts, and I'd go and see someone, they'd fix it, and then I'd go back with my life. Nothing would change. The odd time here and there it would get really bad, but then I hit an age, or my body has just taken so much abuse from the rugby or the tree climbing or whatever else I was doing, that it was having enormous blowouts, like can't feel my legs sort of stuff, and having to walk around on crutches and being prescribed endone and all this sort of opioids and shit. So it's like, yeah, good idea. Fortunately, I managed to recognize when I was taking them, hang on, I'm noticing them wearing off quicker and then desiring more. So I was like, straight in the bin. Don't even go there because that's the last thing that I wanted. But so then I was the next teacher was the back pain, the like chronic pain. Like I'd been in pain most of my life, but now it was proper chronic, and then it was affecting me here. It was affecting my relationship with my wife, affecting the way I was talking to my kids. So then at some point I had to step in myself and take over. Chiropractors weren't working, osteopaths weren't working, physios weren't doing it. So then I had to find new guides, alternative guides, or et cetera, who could show me the way. So then I started learning, and they're teaching me how to breathe into my body. This is what I said, the stuff I sent you, and this is what I do now, is like, they taught me to connect my brain to the muscles that weren't working, that was causing the pain, via breathwork, via strength training, which then allowed me to connect back into my body, which then brought me out of that freeze state and brought me out of that funk that I was stuck in, because I was now feeling more alive inside my body than I ever had before. Like my glutes were finally working, my hamstrings were working. Like I was doing CrossFit 6 days a week and competing in Olympic lifting. I had a 200-kilo deadlift and I had zero strength in my hamstrings, like nothing. I could squat 150 kilos and my glutes didn't work. I mean, no wonder my back shit itself, because my brain wasn't talking to those muscles properly. So via the breath and via the movement, the different movements and training my mind to flick muscles into a sympathetic state, I could bring them back online. And now I can feel them both by saying the word hamstring or quads or lats or pecs. And then you go into emotional mapping, and self-love is in the pecs. And guess who couldn't feel his pecs? Gratitude is in his lats. All these sort of woo-woo sort of shit that actually turns out to be very, very real. It started teaching me that, and then all of a sudden I'm coming alive, and I'm like, I am teaching people this shit. So I was already a personal trainer, and then I added that in. And then because they'd been teaching me to breathe into my brain, into my body, and then they were making me do workouts only breathing through my nose, but not really explaining why, I was like, well, let's find out some more about this.
Is there sort of a way that people can, do you have a website or something, or is there
I do have a website. It's a bit shit at the moment, so it's not quite finished. It's my business is called Breathe Into Life. Instagram at the moment is where I put most of my stuff. There's a few accounts there, but yeah, breathe.into.life. Just get in touch with me and we can talk about whatever you need to talk about. But bringing myself back to life physically was huge, and I see it in other people all the time. You can see it on people's faces. You see the sort of sunk cheeks, and the way they hold themselves and the way they stand. And then we can start to bring you back to life. We can start to talk about the nervous system, all that sort of things. But then further down the line, I found myself again drawn into, like I said, sound healing bar sessions and meditations. And then my counselor says to me, there's a breathwork session happening at the road, down the road at the yoga studio. Go do that. Go, whatever. I was open to it, and it was brilliant because the list of stuff you're supposed to bring was a yoga mat, blanket, pillow, eye mask, journal, pen, water bottle. I turned up with the water bottle only. I was full of resistance of what's this? I'll come, but I'm just gonna whatever. And they took you through this breathwork thing, and it's basically the way they did it at the time is like holotropic breathing, if you've ever heard of that. It's rhythmical deep breathing, like your Wim Hof, kind of without the breath holding and the competitive bit. And we basically just lay on the floor. We breathed heavily for 45 minutes, and about 2/3 of the way through, I was sweating like a lunatic. And then all of a sudden, from the toes through to my head, I had this enormous wave of emotion run through my body, and I started crying. Wow. And I just cried, and I cried, and I cried, like ugly face crying, sort of, really sobbing my fucking eyes out. I had no idea what it was about, but all I knew was that it was making me feel better. And it was, all those things that I like as humans, but especially for me as a man, it was like, nope, need to be strong. Nope, keep that in. No, not letting that out either. Let's keep it all in here. And that's literally what the body does. The brain doesn't store it. It keeps it in your body somewhere. And so I was just, it didn't all come out at once, but there was a lot. And I was just like, and then, it was like, okay, now sit up and talk to the two people next to you and, talk about your experience. And I'm like, so my head's still stuck on the floor. I'm like, I can't get up. I felt like someone had pulled all the bones out of my body, and I was just lying on the floor. I was like, what the hell just happened? And I eventually sat up, and we talked about the experience, and I was openly admitting, I just lay on the floor and I cried for 20 minutes. It was great. And then I walked out taller, and I felt freer here. And I went home, and Anna, my wife, said, well, what was that all about? And I went, lay on the floor and cried. It's like, So, long story short, that then sent me down another rabbit hole of finding out what the hell that was. And now I've been to many different practitioners, and I've been to some wonderful people who've taught me everything that they know. And I've been on some adventures where we've hiked up mountains with our shirts off, with just, in blizzards, controlling ourselves with our breath. And I've done lay on the floor, and I've cried, and I've shouted, and I've laughed, and I've danced, and and it's changed. It's changed everything. It's changed it all, You know, it's let it all out. Not all of it. No, I'm not done yet. I don't think. Well, I'm not done because things keep happening. Like last week, I was away helping to facilitate on a men's trip, and by the third day, I had to break down. I just lost it. I was helping facilitate someone else. They were going through a thing, and we were in water as well, which was really cool. I was just sobbing my eyes out while they were going through their thing because everything's a bit stressful at home at the moment, and a few other bits and bobs. But I was trying to be strong again. I was trying to be strong for the man to help them on their journeys, and I needed to let it all out for me, and it was beautiful. It was just just had to let it go. So yeah, and then but all the while as well, I've been learning. They taught me about my nervous system. They taught me about like CO2 tolerance levels, VO2 max, all these sorts of things that we're doing wrong, like over breathing, mouth breathing, not using your nose. You shouldn't really ever breathe in through your mouth unless someone's chasing you or someone's got a knife or there's a bear or some shit like that. It really is that important, and it's. And it made me realize that, like, as a kid, again, at boarding school, was like, you're breathing too loud, breathe through your mouth. And it sits here. Then you're in the sympathetic again. Then you're constantly sympathetic because you're like, oh, I'm trying to be quiet. And then someone called me fat, so I never let my tummy touch my fucking t-shirt ever again. So I didn't breathe into my diaphragm, which is where the parasympathetic left. So I never went back into like a full parasympathetic state. I was mouth breathing and trying to keep my belly flat. So I was up here all my life. And you're like, no wonder you're stressed out your eyeballs. No wonder you're having panic attacks and you're having anxiety. And no wonder you're stuck in a freeze state because you're like, your brain isn't even engaged because you're in that fight and or flight state. It shuts down. And like everyone's doing it, and it's just like, oh my god, I can't believe it's taken this long to get to this. But I'm so happy that it has. That now I can control it. Like I said, like if anxiety comes my way, I ask myself two questions: what was I thinking about? How was I breathing? Right. I can guarantee you, those two things led you to the anxiety because you were thinking about something that upsets you, or the future, or something from the past that was fucked up, and then you started holding your breath. Right. And then your body went into a response. You gave your body a reason to respond, and it responded. And then you're like, oh, panic is hitting me like a train. No, panic is coming from here outwards. Let's calm it down. Let's stop it. Or here outwards, And now I can be in a position, I went through all these learnings. I went through all these courses with the one goal: fix myself. Like you'd sit in a circle at the beginning, like in a room full of healers, and I'm a tradie, and they were like, "Well, I'm already a Reiki healer and all this," and nothing them or no, 100% respect for all of them. But I was like, "Oh shit, I'm well out of my league here." And they were like, "I'm trying to do this so I can help my clients more and all that sort of shit." And I was just like, I'm fucked. I'm just broken. I'm broken, and I'll be the first to admit it. And you need to fix me. And that's what they did. It was like a 3-month course. Like we did like a month worth of online stuff, and then we did a 5-day in-person thing. And the guy Johannes Egbert's Breathless Expeditions, if anyone wants to look him up, he is just a genius when it comes to this stuff. He studied under everyone. If you want to do a separate one about the breathwork alone, that's more than welcome. But one thing I will say about the whole breathwork journey, which is kind of where I was going with this, is it's allowed me, like I said, it's given me time with my eyes closed and my brain shut down to see things from a different angle, to understand the drinking, to understand who did what, why, when, and how I ended up going the way I did. And I understand it now, and I can appreciate it, and it has kept me sober. Amazing. And it will keep me sober because of the knowledge that it has allowed me to find out on my own. So it's one of these, and again, going back to your comment about men needing to talk, for men who don't want to talk, like I used to be, breathwork is the way to do it. It will allow you to deal with 10 years worth of shite in one session. You'll be more open to share your stuff afterwards as well. It just allows it to happen. So for me, it has been the constant that has allowed me, kept me sober, or it helped me understand myself so much better and understand the past. And that's why I can say with all honesty, it is what it is. everyone did the best that they could with what they had. And so did I.
That's I've just sat here transfixed on it. I'm not gonna lie, I've been hanging off your every word. It's utterly engaging, fascinating. I love hearing people. The fact that I know you, it is completely irrelevant. You're passionate about this subject. It makes me want to explore it. It's just incredible. And yeah, I think we should have another session. I guess just really my sort of final thing for this podcast today would be, you know, what would be your advice to others? You know, you've got sober, you've found your journey, you've found spiritualism, if that's the right word. You've got into, you know, this breathe into life thing. You know, if someone, because you know we do this for people who listen, people who are struggling, you know, people who may be still drinking or recently stopped or looking to discover themselves, what would be your message to those people?
I suppose the message is, from my point of view, the number one thing is to recognize and acknowledge what's going on, what you're doing. Because if you're already thinking about it, obviously you're beginning to acknowledge it. Acknowledging it and recognizing it and not being hard on yourself is the first step. It's also the hardest step. And then remember that now once you do quit, you're now moving into the future. You're moving into a new journey. You're going somewhere new. You're not looking backwards. Don't look back. There's nothing back there for you. It's done. Is what it is. Some of it was good. A lot of it was like hilarious. A lot of it was brilliant. A lot of it was kind of weird and bad as well. You know, there were some bad things. There's some stuff I'm not proud of. And be prepared to do the work, man. You gotta understand that you can't just decide to quit drinking, but you've got to then start working. And you've got to learn about yourself, and figure some shit out. And ask for help, whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be alcohol groups. It can be anything. Like I said, I started at sound healing, lying on the floor, vibrating, which is kind of weird, but it's awesome. I love sound healing. It's great. But yeah, so just you've got to find a path. So like every time I quit, I wasn't on a path. I was just on that's over now. Then I found my path, and everything was so much easier. And that doesn't have to be a super spiritual thing. And I don't consider my journey to be super spiritual in any way. All I now know is that I don't want to drink. I'm not scared of dying, and I'm, dare I say it, happy.
I think,
like
I think the sort of final thing as well is that two things I would say. One is sharing all of this is so incredibly important. Matt, you used the thing about it'd be like climbing Everest and coming back down and everybody saying, well, how was it? And you say, yeah, it was all right. Don't really want to talk about it, honestly. So the journey is so valuable to so many. I also have a theory that anybody that's been through this type of journey ends up in a place which is, I'm not going to say, well, resisting the temptation to say, well, it makes you a better person. But I think it creates a perspective which is somewhat unique and incredibly valuable. And I do think that the people I admire most in the world are the ones who have been through a bit of a journey, who it's not been a straight line for them, you know. They're always more interesting. They've always got more to share, to give to others. And that's at the end of the day what this is all about. And so I think we should probably draw it to a close now, mainly because I'm going to have to edit this and it's going to take me quite a while.
Yeah. Just one last thing. Sorry, just on what you were just saying, I 100% agree with you with the sharing part. And I'll just say, I always believe that we're at a time where everyone's talking about raising awareness about men's mental health, and no one's actually talking about their experiences. So for us men, particularly if you've been through it and you're out the other side, or you're kind of out the other side, in my opinion, you're kind of obligated to start talking about it. We need to help each other, and the only way we can raise awareness is by talking about this shit openly.
100% agree.
So please talk.
Yeah,
I'm always open. I'm always here to listen. I'm always here to share. There's nothing I'm going to hide from anyone.
amazing.
Brilliant words,
So,
Barney. Blown away by that.
Right, I'm trying not to breathe through my mouth at the moment. I'm trying to do my yeah. That's
yeah.
brilliant. That's
We'll have
fantastic.
to get
Right,
I'll have to get you two as a with an online breathing session. I'll get you to
do
lie
it.
on the
I'm
floor
in.
and
I
breathe.
don't need you. Don't need to ask me twice, dude. I'm in. Just tell me when and where, and I'm in. I'm in.
No,
I'm in. Okay. All right.
go lie on the floor. Come on, let's
Yeah.
go.
No. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's my favourite sounding piece. I'm going to do that. Listen, that's been amazing, absolutely fantastic. Way better. I mean, I'm like you, Matt. I can't even begin to. I'm going to leave here, and Jan's going to say, "Oh, how was that?" And I'm like, "Oh, fucking hell, I don't even know where to start with this one."
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh, it's amazing, but we're going to draw it to a close because we're sort of slightly conscious of time. So just let me say thanks
Yep.
again, Barney. It's been lovely to see you again, apart from anything else. But it's been fantastic
Yeah,
and
man.
amazing. And
Yeah.
yeah, we'll leave it there. But I think we will need to do maybe one or two more of these. And but for right now, I think perhaps we'll call it a day. So thanks, Barney. Thanks, Matt. And yeah, till the next time.
Thanks, everyone.
My pleasure. Thank you.